Alright, so now let's go over a little of the lab-camel-services folder. We have our main resources in Java and our test resources in Java. I'm going to start with the camel-services test file. This is sort of an overview because it is sort of an outline of the files I'll show you later. Here we have to tell what we're going to run with, which test files, and we set up DAO objects that we're going to use to refer back to the repositories. We create a set of performers, bookings, and venues as part of these tests, and in our @before we run any tests, we have our setup function to delete what has previously been loaded and to reset our mock endpoints. So the should save venue, we set our mock endpoint to expect a certain number of messages. We create a message and we send it. You should know that with Camel, there is essentially an exchange which contains one in and one out message, each of which can have any object as the body, and also a map of headers, a string object, which then get mapped to whatever we want to set them to, and then we kind of set them off on a series of fetch quests, as shown in the route, until ending on a certain end point. In this case, it is our mock endpoint, with an expected message count, which we have for this one. Should retrieve venue, there is just one, and so assert is satisfied is when we ensure that it has received the proper number of messages in the endpoint. Then there are a couple of assert functions after that to check if we have the values of the venues we wanted, and in particular, which venues they are. Okay, next I'll show you the camel context XML file, which we have in our resources. This is where we load in which of the classes we're going to be using. So we mentioned the lab route builder and the lab proxy sender. These are both interfaces that I'll show you later. The beans profile connects to which, in this case, our MongoDB context or our OpenShift context, kind of setting a profile for which of the set of information we want to load in from. Next, I'll show you the lab route builder. This is our main route file. We have several routes in here. The first one just talks about REST functionality, and you can see that we have get, head, put, post, delete, trace, options, connect, and patch. They're on line 35, and that's going to be about the various functionings that exist within REST. The next one is our kind of catch-all route, which we start with a /bookings, and after creating a query, we go of application type JSON, representing a booking request class. We send it to each of the other routes, be they update booking, delete booking, and get booking, depending on which one needs to be done. Each one has its own checks within it. I'll scroll down in a moment to show you those. Oh, and we also have one for /venues. The query that we use has a start date, end date, venue, performer, which, just like in querying a database, we're querying the database we've connected to the server with our camel route, given these 4 pieces of information as they go in. And you can see that that goes to direct new booking, and these are down here, all these other direct methods. The from is kind of the entry point of them, and they each have a bean that they go to. For instance, request service has build session, local decision service has rules to execute, and I'll open up the booking request service now to show you that this one is an interface that we have implemented in service.impl. So here again we have our DAO objects to make sure that we've accessed things properly. Then we have a constructor and the build session functionality, which collects a single venue for the session. We have the same booking, the method being called in our direct new booking accessing of this bean, and collect a single venue for the session, in which we'll aggregate all of these facts we've collected so far into our session, essentially. Going back to lab route builder, you can see that the bean says bean request service, save booking there in line 91, the end of direct new booking. So, in our first route, kind of sends each of these to other routes, and each route have their own way of accessing the beans with a certain method, or receiving a certain header ID, or receiving a certain property of the message that we are sending through. The message, again, having one object in its body, and this type, booking request.class, in the form of an application.json. Application/JSON. It goes to each of these routes and then ends. If you've handled assembly code, it follows that kind of iterative structure. I like to think of it as fetch quests because I'm more of an RPG fan, but perhaps that's just me. There is also one for /venues. Again, that'll literally go on the end of the URL of the server we are accessing. So like localhost :8081/performance types, or possibly the name of a service between the port number and route, or /venues, or /bookings.